Check the description for the following discount codes.
I was going to do 2 more videos, one talking about the Pico 4 6 months on for PCVR use, and another one talking about what it's like to use for sim racing specifically. But to be honest, after starting to put the footage together and do all the testing, it's just going to be covered in this one video because there's really not that much to talk about when it comes to it. Sim racing is PCVR when you're doing it in a VR headset. And there's only a few things that really matter, so it's not worth a video all of its own. So if you saw the previous video, we're looking at a brand new unit that I got sent from Pico, sort of literally 6 months on from release when I bought the very first one, pre-ordered it. And I thought I'd take the opportunity to see whether things have moved on both on a hardware and software side, because there was quite a few issues people were having with these first releases. So go back, watch my last video if you want to see what the conclusion there was. Today we're just going to talk about the PCVR experience, including sim racing. Now, the streaming assistant software, which came from Pico 6 months ago, was very, very poor at initial release. We only had very low render resolution options. There was no bitrate slider. There's very few options at all in actual fact. And I'm happy to say that in the last 6 months, that has improved. We have higher resolutions. We have a bitrate slider. I might put a screenshot up. It's not particularly interesting. And there was also an issue I personally had with the audio streaming, and this was both wired or wireless. It was just distorted and horrible, and I couldn't figure out a way to correct it. Now, interestingly, when I tried it this time round, it did exactly the same thing, and this one on a couple of different PCs. Exactly the same thing, but this time when I chose headset only for audio, the issue was resolved, and it comes out crystal clear, just like it should do. Previously, that didn't make any difference. It was whether I had it through the PC sound output or whether I had it for the headset sound output or both, it was always distorted. But that, if you now choose headset, at least with my PC configuration, so many different motherboards, sound cards available, it could be very specific. And for me, that resolved the issue. No more sound problems. Now, again, everything like the tracking all still works exactly as it does for standalone, so there's no change there. It's more about the visual experience because the image that you see is now compressed and sent either over a cable, USB-C, or over Wi-Fi, which is my personal preference. If you have a wireless headset, then you really should play things, PCVR games, wirelessly, in my opinion, because it is a game changer. In fact, I put some footage up of me playing stuff now. The ability to just turn around without a wire either wrapping around your ankles, your body, your head, your neck, wherever. If you've got the space to be able to turn around freely, like I have in the footage you'll see here, it is an absolute game changer. You can lay down on the floor and snipe people in games. You can do forward rolls if you want, assuming the headset doesn't fall off. You can do whatever you want, complete freedom. And that is, there's just nothing like that. Going back to a wired solution for the type of games where you want 360 degrees of freedom really is just something I couldn't do. And I'm happy to sacrifice a small amount of visual quality to be able to do this, because the issue, of course, is it is compressed. And even if you run at the very highest setting, well, if you're at the very highest settings, you're going to need something like a 4090. Because I can't do it, I've only got a 3080. I can't even get close to maximum settings at 90 hertz. If you can, though, then it's a much better image, and much closer to that of a wired headset. But it will never be exactly the same because it is being compressed. For me, with my 3080, I have to run things on sort of medium-ish render resolution and then a reasonable in-game setting. In darker areas, if I look, I can see the compression. And this is the same for a Quest 2 as well. It's all compressed and sent wirelessly or cabled to the headset. But I find that little trade-off for the odd time when I happen to notice a bit of compression, that's well worth it for that freedom to be able to just spin around and do whatever the hell I want in VR. Now, as I say, the experience you're going to get visually here is really going to be very much down to your hardware, your GPU, and even your CPU as well. If you can run it at the highest possible render resolution, it's still a very, very good quality image. And if you can turn the bitrate up to maximum, the compression is hardly noticeable, at all, unless you're specifically looking for it. But if we're talking wireless, you'll need a very good solid Wi-Fi connection, preferably a dedicated router in the same room, 5 gigahertz, and no other devices around interfering with that signal to be able to get your network latency as low as possible. We're talking maybe 5 milliseconds would be as low as what I've seen and what I tend to maintain, 5 or 6 milliseconds for the network latency. And then the other latencies that contribute to this experience and how it feels will be mostly down to your GPU at this point and the in-game quality that you run, the graphics settings, and also the render resolution. With my 3080, like I say, medium high settings, and I can maintain an overall input to display latency, I believe that's how it's calculated, of around 35 milliseconds. That for me is acceptable. You saw me playing Beat Saber, albeit I'm not a Beat Saber pro. I didn't notice a delay, and I have done previously when I've turned things up so much that we're talking 60 milliseconds, 70 milliseconds. I noticed that. Also, I've been a DJ my entire life. I used to do it for a living at one point, sort of 20 years. So I'm very sensitive to sort of physical input to audio responses. And so when there's a slight delay with things, it's something I pick up on very easily. So if I was to move that saber to try and hit something on the beat and it doesn't, it stands out a mile to me. And I'm happy to say that the settings I was using, because the Beat Saber you saw me playing there was the PC version, not standalone, because obviously this doesn't support standalone Oculus software because it isn't an Oculus headset. So if you want to play Beat Saber, you do it using the PC version. Now, you can't do that using the Pico Streaming Assistant. And to be honest, the Pico Streaming Assistant, whilst it has come along, and we've got bitrate sliders, we've got high resolutions, the audio doesn't distort now when selecting headset only, it's still the least reliable way for playing PCVR from my testing. It's better, but it's still not good. I went to play Saints and Sinners Walking Dead, and the controllers were still recognised as Vive controllers, and it was telling me to press buttons that didn't exist to be able to enter the game. A few other things still didn't work like they would if I was using a Quest. I think big screen was another one that still didn't work. But switching over to virtual desktop, the standalone wireless connectivity software from Guy Godin, is 100% the way to go if you want to use your Pico 4 for PCVR. With that, controllers were instantly recognised properly. They were showing up as Oculus controllers, and we have button parity, so that's fine. It works exactly as you would expect. And all the software pretty much that wouldn't work through the streaming assistant did work through virtual desktop. Now, even though there is an extra 15 or 16 quid for the app, it's well worth it, because that will enable you to not only play games that don't work properly using the Pico Streaming Assistant, it will let you play Oculus titles, which of course is excellent because there is a great library of Oculus titles out there. So for PCVR, we've got to acknowledge straight away you don't get the same image quality as with a proper wired connection, HDMI or DisplayPort. There is going to be some compression, but for games where you want freedom to run around your front room and do handstands and backflips in VR, then you can, and that is a massive plus and something that you just can't do with a wired connection. So from that point of view, using virtual desktop, I get an excellent experience, better than that of my Quest 2 because of the pancake lenses, the increased quality of the visuals there and the balance of the headset on my head. I still obviously have the issues with light leakage around the side. In fact, someone's sending me a replacement facial interface to try. I have tried one other one. That didn't fit very well either, so we've got something else coming. But yeah, for that experience, the games you see me playing there, it's great. It's my choice over the Quest 2. When I bought my original one of these, after playing some PCVR stuff, I actually sold one of my 2 Quest 2s on to a friend because I was able to replace that for PCVR use with one of these, with this one that's sat there. So that's still good. With virtual desktop, the streaming assistant, still a no-go really. For sim racing, I'll put a little clip up of me playing some ACC now. For sim racing, I'm not a big fan of sim racing in VR anyway, partly because you need a really strong computer to be able to get a good visual experience in VR, more so than with PCVR titles. So for me, in my 3080 in ACC, I'm running on VR low to be able to hold 90 hertz, and that just looks a bit crap. You know, the visuals are really toned down to be able to hold a solid frame rate. And for me, that's too much of a trade-off. I'd rather just sit in my triple setup, running everything on, you know, high or ultra or epic, whatever it is, and have that better visual fidelity than what I get through being in a VR headset. And VR versus triples is a debate that people can have till the cows come home. I prefer triples for two reasons. One, I can run the graphics at a higher fidelity setting so it looks nicer. And two, I don't have to wear a sweaty headset on a hot summer's day and look at PlayStation 1 quality graphics, even with a 3080 GPU. Now, some people are going to be like, oh, my 3080 can run fine, Carl, I can run this at whatever resolution. I seem to see this a lot in the comments. Maybe you're happy to run at a lower frame rate than me. Maybe you've got something else going on that enables you to get better results. But I've got a 3080 here, a 2080 downstairs. They both stack up exactly as they would expect from a performance point of view. And for me, sim racing, ACC in particular, or Dirt Rally as well, we're talking medium graphics settings to get a solid 90 hertz, 90 FPS in one of these headsets. Now, that again doesn't look very good because the graphics have had to be turned down. The experience is great, you know, to be able to turn your head and look around and what have you, but I can do that with my 55s anyway. I can't look down, you know, at the floor, the footwells of the car like I can in VR, and I can't look behind me. And whilst that's cool to do from a novelty point of view, it's not something you ever do in your race. You're looking forward most of the time, around the apex of corners, and maybe glancing in your mirrors. Now, field of view wise with this, you can see in your peripheral vision, you can see the mirror nearest to you. So if it's left-hand drive, it'll be your left mirror, right-hand drive car, it'll be your right mirror. And you can see your rear view mirror. This is slightly subjective because if you have the headset further away from your eyes, that field of view decreases, and if you've got a flatter face and it squashes further against it, you'll get a slightly bigger field of view. But for me, I can see quite easily my peripheral, my left-hand mirror in a left-hand drive car, so that's good for, you know, cars coming up, and I can see my rear view mirror up there also without having to turn my head. Headsets with a very narrow field of view, you would need to turn your head to look at the nearest mirror to you and to look up at your rear view. You don't have to with this, at least not with my face shape and the field of view that I get. The passenger side mirror, whether that's right or left, I do have to turn my head slightly, but you would do in real life in a real car as well. If I'm sat in my car driving and I want to look in my passenger mirror, I turn my head and I look at it. So from that point of view, the field of view is good. Obviously the lenses, the image quality is great. It's just I have to run everything at quite low to medium settings to hold a solid 90 hertz. And that, for me, is not something that I'm prepared to do, just to have that experience of feeling like I'm more in a car, which is great, but then it doesn't look like I'm in a car. It looks like I'm in a low quality, you know, PlayStation 1 or 2 computer game. I mean, maybe not quite that bad, I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean, compared to being sat there with my triple 4K displays with everything up really high, to go to low or medium in your VR headset, you know, everything just looks noticeably toned down, and so the experience isn't as good. But, you know, I know a lot of people that can put faster lap times in racing in VR, and I've experienced this myself. I remember I did a stage in Dirt Rally, and I managed to shave half a second off on my very first go in, I think it might have been this VR headset the first time I tried it, and I was like, well, I can definitely drive faster in VR, even if I don't choose that as my preference. But this is personal preference, whether you like VR for sim racing or whether you don't. But yeah, the field of view is good. If you've got a strong graphics card and you can crank those visuals up, the render resolution and the in-game graphics, then it's going to look beautiful. Again, there will of course be compression depending on your settings and depending on what it is, you know, you're looking at. Is it a nighttime race? Is it a daytime race? You are going to pick out compression here and there if you're looking for it. But again, it will only be if you're looking for it. If you've got a 4090 and everything's maxed out and you've got a solid Wi-Fi connection, or you're using the cable, so latency is at its lowest, it's going to be a good experience from a wireless headset point of view. Again, we must always point out that a dedicated wired headset is going to have no compressed images, and so it will look better. But would I choose this over the Quest for a PCVR sim racing headset? I still would, and that assuming it fits nicely around here because of those pancake lenses and the better balance. For me, that's still a win-win in both of those situations. So I think that's probably covered everything. You know, has the Pico 4 changed in any significant way over the last 6 months? And we've, you know, in conclusion, we've seen some good improvements from the standalone software side of things that I covered in the last video. We have seen improvements here with the streaming system for PCVR and for sim racing, but the answer is still to use virtual desktop, in my opinion. Or if you want a dedicated PCVR headset, or sim racing headset, sorry, get a wired one. You know, the G2 is still a good option out there. Or if you want something that's an all-rounder, you want to do standalone games, you want to do PCVR games, and you want to sim race, the Quest 3 is on the horizon. And if you can wait, I think we should probably do so. If you don't want to wait, then this is still a good option that I can recommend because the visual quality is so much clearer than that of a Quest 2. The compromises being facial interface fit based on your face shape, and of course the library of standalone software versus that of the Quest 2. Now, I don't really, someone in the comments about say, oh, Carl, don't forget the Quest 2 can do 120 Hertz. To me, 120 Hertz is still a completely pointless refresh rate. The XR2 chipset can't run anything of significance at 120 Hertz. If it's got great visuals, then it's going to be running 72 or 90, because if it's got great visuals, to try and run it, you know, 40% faster, it's just not going to be able to do it. So you're going to sacrifice your visual fidelity. And from a PCVR point of view, as I just mentioned a minute ago, even my 3080 and my 5800X CPU, I'm on medium high settings in most PCVR titles with the render resolution sort of 3/4 of the way up. You know, I still can't run this flat out or a Quest 2, even with what I've got. So I think 120 Hertz is pointless because I couldn't do anything with it even if I wanted to. If I wanted to run 120 Hertz, you know, I've got a Quest 2 here, so I could. I'd have to turn things down even more. And for me, I'd rather have things looking more realistic if it's a sim racing title, or just visually more impressive if it's a normal PCVR title running at 90 Hertz or even 72 if I have to, where, you know, input delay and latency isn't so important, because with 90 you'll get a slightly faster response time from your inputs as well. Then I would rather do it that way, you know. So for me, the fact that it doesn't have 120 Hertz is neither here nor there. There's only going to be a few people out there with a 4090, maybe a 4080 can do it. You know, I don't know, I haven't got one here to test, and a suitable CPU to go with it. I did have a quick blast in Microsoft Flight Simulator as well, some people will probably ask, and basically my experience there is just a mirror image of my sim racing experience. And again, the same comments about having to turn everything down because Microsoft Flight Simulator is incredibly difficult to run until you start using any, you know, AI scaling to help you, for example. But yeah, I think that's probably covered everything. There'll be a link in the description for one of these should you want to pick one up. As I say, if you can wait, you're probably better off waiting for the Quest 3. If you can't wait and you want a balanced, you know, nice well-balanced headset with great pancake lenses, good visuals, comfortable controllers, comparable battery life to a Quest, but a smaller standalone library, then grab yourself a Pico 4. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and take it easy.